Another coach has left the Australian national team set up, with Football Australia announcing on Wednesday afternoon that Mel Andreatta has departed her role as assistant Matildas coach and coach of the under 23s to join the Scottish women's national team as their head coach. And it really brings into a broader context the discussion around Australian coaching at the moment, with so many departures, leaving programs. Joining myself, Poletti, here on this sort of emergency edition of the Dubcast is Kieran Yap. Kieran, thank you so much for joining me on short notice.
No worries. It's always a pleasure to jump in.
The last time you were here, we talked about Robbie Hooker leaving the Wanderers, and
Yeah,
now we're talking about Mel Andreatta leaving Australia. You're our coaching departure expert at this rate.
yeah. I love jumping on for the big news, and yeah, this is fairly big. This is an important departure.
It is indeed. So, as I said, Mel Andreatta off to Scotland to coach the women's national team there, the senior women's national team. Football Australia on Wednesday afternoon congratulated her on her appointment. She's been around Brisbane Roar. She's been involved in the national team setup for quite some time. She won the premiership with Brisbane Roar in 2018, I want to say off the top of my head. Held various roles within the national team setup. Football Australia head of national teams Gary Moretti said that Mel's influence on women's football in Australia at both the domestic and international level has been significant, where she has been instrumental in not only the development of current Combank Matildas, but the success of the team over recent years. Mel's appointment as head coach of the Scotland women's national team has not only deserved recognition for her achievements to date, but further acknowledgement of the high regard for Australian coaches internationally. We would like to thank Mel for her contribution to our women's national teams for more than a decade and wish her all the very best with this new and exciting chapter. And Kieran, I guess that's sort of the point I want to start on is, the acknowledgement of the high regard for Australian coaches internationally. Mark Torcaso, Alan Sajic, Ray Dower, Leah Blaney, Ante Milicic, massive names that have either coached a senior national team in recent years or are currently coaching a national team. In Ray Dower's case, has been scouted by FIFA. What's going on here that clearly the rest of the world is seeing the value in Australian coaches, but the FA isn't?
Yeah, but this is an interesting one because I think that what it shows is that Mel Andrietta was keen on becoming a head coach. It would have been easy from the outside to assume that she was happy to be part of a national team set up and be an assistant or be an under 23s coach. But what this shows is she was looking for and eager for a head coach role, and Scotland have potentially lucked out on that. It also shows that she was keen for the role and she wasn't really in the running for this one. I would have been happy for her to be given the interim job initially. I think that was my first gut instinct when Gustafsson departed, was that she was going to be given the interim job, maybe with a way to audition if she did really well to get the full-time job, but that doesn't look like it was ever a possibility, which is a little bit unusual. It's sort of how most national team systems in most football countries work, is you sort of promote players and coaches from the youth ranks. So not greatly thrilled that this wasn't even considered. It doesn't seem to be, but yeah, it is in another way, like you said, a big feather in the cap for Australian coaches. Andrew Durante is another one to add to that list. He's an assistant coach at the Philippines, and Gary Van Egmont's running programs in China. So our coaches are being sought out and scouted, which is a testament to their abilities, considering also almost none of them are full-time in this country.
Yeah, I forgot Tanya Oxtoby's name on that list as well.
Yeah.
It's a gluttony of coaches just heading overseas in different national team setups.
Yeah, well, Tanya's a bit different because she left. She didn't get scouted from Australia to go overseas. She went overseas to a bit like Joe Montemuro, a bit to forge a career in Europe. But yeah, it's obvious that they can cut it and are being looked at as much as our players are, if not more.
Yeah, and this all comes amongst the wider discussion as well. And we, myself and Burke, talked about this on this week's episode of the Dubcast. The fact that it's 9 months on since Tony Gustafsson left. Joe Montemuro is apparently top of the list, but the FA had a chance to lock him up a year ago, Kieran. Like, I don't know. The U17s don't have a coach. The U20s don't have a coach. The U17s and the U20s now do have a coach, but the U23s don't. Does that program even exist anymore? The senior Matildas don't have a coach. I'm honestly half expecting to read a press release next week that Alex Aparcus is off to go coach the Venezuelan team or something with the rate at which coaches are just leaving, for these different roles. It's just,
Mm.
but I think it's just the fact that, if this really has been a top down, starting with Gustafsson's departure.
Yeah, look, it's possible that whoever the next coach is who's coming in will want to have their own hierarchy, their own under-23s coach, because under-23s is more closely linked with the senior team than the under-20s are. The under-20s and the under-17s are about developing players, but by the time you get to under-23s level, you should be able to you should be a professional footballer by that point. So it's possible that they will want their own assistants to run that. It's possible that won't exist at all anymore. We don't really know what the situation is there, but yeah, I mean, we're running out of time is the basic thing. Even if they get Joe Montemuro, who seems to be who they want, especially according to the Paramount broadcast the other night, even if they get him, I don't know how much time he has left to really get this team flying and then regenerate them so that we don't have a really old side that falls off a cliff at the end of 2027.
Yeah, I was having a lot of thoughts about this morning. It was just sort of looking at it like, if you look at the Australian men's cricket team from the early to mid 2000s, it was sort of, you had Gilchrist, you had McGrath, you had Warren, who sort of left, and then Langer followed not long afterwards, and then Hayden followed not long afterwards, and Ponting after that. And they exited in stages, as opposed to right now, like, there's a legitimate chance we're looking at the end of the 2027 World Cup and a third of the starting 11 is gone. Like, that's not how you sort of regenerate a program.
Yeah, I mean, just the probably the best recent example is the US women's national team at the last World Cup. They looked good on paper because so many of them were legends and icons and they'd won World Cups. But when they actually got on the pitch, they just didn't look. They weren't the same players. Alex Morgan was 4 years past her best. Megan Rapinoe was clearly 4 to 6 years past her best. I mean, it's not. It just happens, and you don't want to be relying on those players when they're past their best. So we're looking at like the core of the 2023 team, who, credit to Football Australia and Gustafsson and everyone involved. They all peaked at exactly the right time. They all peaked in 2023 when you want them to. They didn't peak the year before. The 2 years before that, they weren't great, and they got to their absolute best in that year when you want them to. Everything past that is kind of just living in hope, really, that they're not going to deteriorate. Which, what's that line from Creed? Time defeats all fighters. Time's undefeated. There's no way they're going to be as good as they were in 2023 in 2027, and it's more after that worries me. And I think that we could see a sharp drop off if we don't start bringing in new players. And whether Montemuro will have the time to do that, he might have the clout to do that, which is the other thing. He might be the guy with the big name that can get rid of big names that have been in there for a long time without upsetting the media and the fans, because he's got the reputation and he's the one they really wanted. So he might be the one to do that. He might not do that. I don't really know. He might not even have the job. We're just all assuming he will.
I mean, that's where all the talk seems to have been. But, one of the things we absolutely know about media in this country is everyone seemingly likes to push their own agendas, and there's a big cohort of mateship around a lot of different things. But yeah, just going back to a point you touched on a little bit earlier, like I very much agreed that Mel Andreatta should have been given the role in the interim as well. I also put Leah Blaney's name forward for that as well, and both of them, Leah Blaney's gone to Japan as an assistant, and I think that one probably hurts the most in this discussion is the fact that she didn't leave for a head coaching role. She left just for an assistant's role, admittedly with, the best national team in Asia, but still, the others, they've at least, and I'm not necessarily saying that going to Japan is not a career advancement, but the others have all left for, just very obvious steps up on the ladder.
Yeah, I think that was a step up as well, though. Like, I think I would have been happy for her to be given a crack at the senior job as well. Like she was probably my personal favorite, just because I like the way the young Matilda's been playing over the past 6 years under her. Um, and I thought that they did very well to qualify for the World Cup last year. But I do get that she might want to add some more education to her coaching repertoire before taking on a senior job, because when she does take it on, especially in Australia, uh, it'll be probably at the start of a brand new generation of players. So she might want to just have a full armory to do that, a full repertoire of skills. But yeah, like you said, it's tricky now, isn't it? Like we don't know what each sort of passing day gives us less and less knowledge about what the future is going to look like instead of more.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this news this afternoon, as we record on Wednesday, just really came out of nowhere because it's just sort of like, well, Andreatta went on maternity leave, I believe it was, not long after Gustafsson left, and then sort of came back, did a assistant's job, and then it's just all of a sudden she's gone completely. So it's very much an uncertain time, in the within the national team setup at the moment, Kieran. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us here on the Dubcast.
No worries. Thanks for having me.